position to be able to start selling them cannabis online. Now we'll have to look at exactly how the regs are written. Maybe we'll, go to make a JV with, people in different states, and maybe certain our technology will allow for certain states to be turned on or off for e-commerce, depending on how rules are written. Or we'll have to go get our own local licenses. But that's the end game, and there's a great precedent for what we did in Canada, being number one in accessories to being number one in cannabis.
Interesting. So, okay, this is something that I just know from firsthand friendship and experience, that the markets and how that are dictated, like brands and things that are in shelves or on shelves and in stores in Canada, is much different than how the Colorado or how the United States kind of plays their games. For those that are kind of wanting to jump across, or, brands that may be very, multi-state, I guess, leveraging to get into Canada, there seems to be a different avenue. How does y'all's laws differ from the United States, and who's on what shelves and how it goes about? Like, how is it different in y'all's world than it is down here?
Sure. Well, even in the United States, as you know, it's all different, right? Each state has their own rules, right? For example, in Florida, you have to be vertically integrated. In Washington State, you can't be, right? In Colorado, obviously, you can be, right? So in Canada, again, the provinces have differences in terms of how cannabis is distributed, but it is a federal system. So all the growing, right, all the licensed producers, they're all federally regulated, and the retailers like us are provincially regulated. So once a product is approved by Health Canada to be on the shelves, it's up to the retailers to decide how we want to, or which ones we want to pick to carry. Okay. And there, most provinces, you end up buying from the government, who buys from the licensed producers. The retailers buy from the government, and then they put it on their shelves like a private business. Each province does vary, though, but that's the primary provinces.
And I think that's kind of what I had heard, is that you go through the government, similar to like our, I guess, board of alcohol, that kind of measures it, like, in where you joked about Jeff Sessions. He's from Chris's home state, but back in Alabama, all the liquor stores are run by the state of Alabama. So like, and if you wanted to get it from a private retailer, that's what it makes me think of when you said it like that. So I just wasn't sure if, like, does the government undercut the ability for, a private company to be able to make a dollar without bleeding the consumer dry?
There are definite things we need to work on, right? So one thing I'd say, in Quebec, only the government can sell even as stores retail to consumers, right? In Ontario and Alberta, you have your own private stores, which we do, 109 across the country. We buy from the government from the government middleman, and we sell to consumers. In some cases, it is difficult because in some cases, the government itself is also selling online.
Yeah.
To consumers, and we have brick and mortar. Now we have seen encouraging signs. So, for example, in Alberta, the government has just announced recently and passed a law. It takes effect next month in March, whereas as of today, only the government can sell online. That's going to switch to the government getting out of the online business of selling cannabis. So private retailers like High Tide will be able to offer delivery.
Okay.
In Ontario, it was the case previously that, again, only the government could sell online cannabis. And now both the government and private retailers like High Tide can sell cannabis online directly to consumers. So there is an element of you're competing, at least online, with the same entity that you're buying from. Now, the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, has said in the past, I don't think there should be a provincial monopoly on anything. So it's good that we've gone from monopoly situation to competition, but it's still kind of strange that you're competing with your ultimately the wholesaler. Correct.
Yeah. And, I follow, obviously, the legislation across the globe loosely. I'm not intelligent, but I follow, like, smart people on Twitter and on social media and things of that nature. And I've seen some things coming out of the Canadian rollout over the last couple of years, whether it be like people were investing in properties to build out, but then they were getting, undercut from the government. And then you start seeing some things like the Canopy Growth, they're on pace to go bankrupt this year. And I wasn't sure if that was like a government had their hands in the pie, which caused it impossible, or if that was just private capitalistic greed that kind of took over some of these people that try to jump the gun. Does that make
sense? Definitely makes sense. Probably a mix of both, right? One situation there is, the government gives, first of all, there's no cap on the number of licenses they can give, right? So when I started covering the sector, there were only 35 licensed producers across all of Canada. So if you were one of them, that was very, very encouraging. Right now, there's hundreds and hundreds, over 700 last I count. And then one license is not the same as one license. So a licensing for growing means that address, that municipal address, is licensed for cannabis. But there's no cap on how much you can grow. So you can have a 20,000 square foot building and you can grow so much cannabis, or you can have a 1,000,000 square foot greenhouse and that's still one license. So what ended up happening was, right, to your point, there ended up being too much of enthusiasm, too much overbuilding, and then seeing prices collapse. And a lot of these greenhouses that were built for tens or hundreds of millions of dollars ended up getting shuttered because they just weren't economic.
And see, that's
We as retailers don't have that problem, right?
Yeah.
We, there's obviously competition and for retail storefront, but because we don't do any growing, we haven't burned hundreds of millions of investor dollars. And we actually make money. We've been adjusted EBITDA positive for about 7 quarters now, whereas most of the licensed producers in Canada, 3 years in, still haven't been able to. So that's one thing we really want to differentiate with the investors is there's a difference between the growers and the retailers. They're completely different market dynamics, completely different business plans and the economics.
So, and I'll follow up that question in regards to business plans. And if somebody is a grower and maybe was getting a little bit undercut, folks like Canopy Growth, they came into our backyard. Everybody kind of knows them because you can trade their stocks legally, as one of the, before cannabis is legal. Canopy has been one that's up there with Hexa and a couple others, but they came and bought, they've had multiple United States acquisition companies of, in the US, Yep. One being Wana, which is literally like one that we see everywhere. Is there something to that where this company is now almost destined for, like, they've spent too much money, they don't have the revenue coming in, they've been like their stock low, they've been dropped, kind of concerns over things like this? Is that a concern going forward? Is that we're getting too big too quick, or maybe there's like not enough I don't know what it is. Like the vagueness leads to obscure law breaking or concerns with investors?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very strange situation where Canadian companies, generally speaking, because everything they do is federally legal, like us, we can be on the NASDAQ, right? And so can Canopy in that example. Whereas the US companies, because what they do is not federally legal, they can't list on the NASDAQ, they end up listing in Canada. Right, so it's a very weird situation where the Canadians want to go to the U.S. in terms of the market is being much bigger, whereas a lot of the Americans, because of the federal situation, they have to end up listing in Canada. So what we're seeing is a lot of the Canadian licensed producers, they're going to the U.S. and they're going to these options agreements the way Canopy is done with Wana and Acreage, where basically we give you a bunch of money in effect, and once the if and when happens for legalization, now we have the right to buy you for X dollars or X multiple. So it's a way of getting in there before you can get in there, okay. Right? But ultimately, what you're doing is, you're still kind of sitting on your hands waiting for the if and when, right? And there's some of these transactions, it's been years since they've been entered into, and you can't really, you don't own the operation, you can't consolidate on your financials, you're not getting the upside, but you're there for the if and when. Right, at High Tide, as I mentioned, we got about $70 million of revenue and earnings coming out of our United States, because what we do, our strategy is a little bit different. It's we keep going deeper in accessories and CBD. And if the if and when takes 1 year, that's fine. If it takes 5 years, we'll just be even deeper, because it's hard to predict what's going to happen in Washington. Now, we are looking at some of these options agreements, and maybe it's a way to supplement our US strategy. But right now, we're on a great run rate and we're making money today in the United States while we're waiting for the eventual much larger if and when.
All right. See, I feel like we're talking with Chris. I feel like we're talking with someone that sees where the turn is ahead, whereas we're just driving down the road casually through the. So can you give us a little bit of hope or insights into what do you see for the future of cannabis? We're starting to see this expansion in Western Europe of legalization in places like Germany, Malta, even Thailand, who used to be like the most anti-cannabis country in Southeast Asia, is now looking at its medicinal benefits as well as making it legalized. What is next on the forefront from your perspective? What is the data telling you?
Well, we are seeing more and more countries, right? Whether it's Europe, that's slowly becoming more and more, adding to the medical programs that they already exist, or in some cases creating medical programs. It's the same thing in the United States, right? The vast majority of states now have some medical program, and many of them now have adult use programs, right? So it's just a matter of how fast the ball will turn and the momentum will come in each of these jurisdictions. But to your point, I mean, Japan, that's an area we're looking at. Australia, that's an area we're looking at. They often start with medical, which is, not something we really excel in, right? We're more kind of retail focused or more adult use focused when it comes to THC. But a lot of them also start with CBD, right? We're seeing that in Europe, and again, we're seeing in countries like Australia and Japan. So, going more into the CBD market is something we are looking at, right? So we acquired, as you mentioned, Blessed in the UK. Now, can we take that, or 80% of it? Now, can we take that to other countries in the EU as a first step, as well as bringing it to the US and to Canada?
Oh, and it seems, kind of like how we were joking that maybe Colorado was the poster child for how we've rolled it out here in the States. I feel like, and everyone always says once New York falls, everyone falls in line behind it. I feel the same as kind of on the national level. Like once the United States, if they even think that, for those that are in the kind of the westernized world, they'll kind of follow suit, and we'll start seeing this mass green wave, even Mexico's in the same boat, and South America to follow, and things of that nature. So it gets me all excited. So I had to ask what you thought maybe next.
Mexico is an area we're excited about too, right? We'll have to see if the exact regs are written. What is the retail situation going to be like in Mexico? It may vary by jurisdiction within the country, like it is in Canada and the US. But it's something we're keeping our eyes on. Again, within our overall framework of being retail focused.
Okay. Well, to follow up on the retail focus, Chris, I'm sorry if I keep asking all the questions, but I'm curious. We're launching our dinner series this week. It's a cannabis paired not fused, but cannabis paired dinner. So it's to be treated just as you would craft beer with chicken wings, or, a red wine with steak. We're going to start doing those similarly here in Denver with our first cannabis dinner. But what
I'll definitely have to hit you up next time I'm in Denver for that type of dinner.
Oh, we're going to be good friends after this, Vahan. Trust me. I'm going to be picking your brain, asking for all the insider information. Those people, when people go to jail for stocks, I need those tips. I'll be quiet. I'm not.
Those are the one things I can't give you, but I'm happy to talk big picture.
You say that, but I saw you wink. It's okay. Okay, so here's my question. You have canna clubs. Cannabis consumption lounges are now starting to come to fruition in the States. Give us some of the pain points of rolling those out, or maybe some tips as to what a canna club should look like stateside.
Well, I mean, in Canada, what we have is, we have adult use, right? So depending on the province, you have to be 18 or 21 or older to go into the store and be purchased, right? So, we don't really have those compassionate clubs anymore, at least not in a macro level, right? What we also do have is our Cabana Club, right? So that's our own loyalty plan. So what we're seeing there is, we're seeing huge growth where we have, member price and market price. When you walk in, you want to buy an accessory, you want to buy cannabis. We're saying is if you're a member, similar to many large retailers like Costco and others, where you get a membership, ours is free, and you can save on both the cannabis and the accessories. So you end up keep coming back to your store, and you create that loyalty, which is exactly what you want as a retailer.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the Cali's campaign they have here. So, okay, when you said Canna Club, I wasn't sure if you were throwing like parties like Miami Beach, but it was the cannabis consumption lounge kind of vibe.
Right. No, that's our loyalty plan. I know there are more compassionate cannabis clubs in Europe, in areas like Spain and the UK, but that's not what we have. Ours is just a customer loyalty plan.
Are you going to Spanibus next month?
We're actually considering it right now. We're doing our due diligence to see if we should go, who can go. It's something we're definitely looking at. Are you guys going?
So the plan, I was going to go with one of our sponsors and try to tag team that and some food, but I'm in a wedding that exact weekend down in New Orleans. So priorities had to take over. So I guess
that'll be fun too. Love New Orleans.
I know. I'll just have to go smoke pot and eat Spanish food on my own dime.
That works.
Yeah, it happens, but that's actually a perfect segue. Chris, as we kind of come into, we've learned a lot about high tide. We've learned a lot about the industry and what the scene looks like in Canada. Now we're going to pick your brain for some just Vahan questions. We're going to take off the work hat, just ask some fun stuff.
All right.
What do you dip your French fries in?
Ketchup.
Fuck yes. Thought he was going to say mayo, Chris.
No. Mayo is like a big European thing, right? But no, for me, it's always ketchup.
I just think it's everywhere outside the United States. People always have mayo with their French fries. So I thought I was the weird one. So I'll take that. Yes, it's a victory. What's an average night out look like for you in Toronto? Even in your younger years, I mean, you look
Wow.
today, but when
Oh,
we
I wish a little bit more than that. But in the old days, I mean, yeah, you go to a nice restaurant, you go clubbing. I feel for the kids today, man. How it's been 2 years of